Enrichment, Enlightenment, Transformation. Rabbi Yisroel Cotlar, the spiritual leader of Chabad of Cary, North Carolina, guides anyone who has been searching for a meaningful life and conscious living. Join our discussions about the mundane, our daily activities, and then infuse every day with a spiritual twist from the inspired sages of the Talmud and Jewish mysticism, which many call Kabbalah. We learn from the root source of all religious monotheistic traditions and delve into the symbolism and levels of meaning from biblical stories.
Today's class will be about the Jewish holiday, minor Jewish holiday, but we'll see why not so minor today, of Lag BaOmer, which is this Thursday, Wednesday night and Thursday. And it's one of those holidays where even people who celebrate it, if you were to ask them what is it that they are celebrating what is it that they are celebrating, people will eck and beck a little bit. Everyone will say something different. What will you say? What's his Lag BaOmer?
It's a break on the time that you count the Omer, you're in the morning, but that's a break in the morning period.
So we mentioned a month ago when we had a class about the students of Rabbi Akiva, and they didn't have respect for one another. Remember, and we asked how could that be, and we talked about the difference between love and respect. We mentioned how there was a great plague that devastated the Jewish people of that time, and that plague stopped on this day. So that would be they stopped dying. They stopped dying. So that is one answer. But just because the plague stops, I mean, the reason for this celebration. So that's one. You'll hear other explanations given. So we're going to focus. Anyone else? Lag BaOmer.
The birthday of Kabbalah, Jewish mysticism, because of the writer of the Zohar.
What about the writer of the Zohar?
He gave his students super duper secrets of the inner secrets, and he told them to be joyous on the day he passed.
Okay, so in a month's time, yes.
Judy has something to say about this. First of all, she's saying she's sorry she can't be there today. She's moving tomorrow.
Okay.
And it's her birthday.
Lag BaOmer is Judy's birthday. And out of anyone in this class who is should be involved in this discussion is Judy, because Judy was in Israel, in Meron, which is a town in Israel where Hal, the author of the Kabbalah, or at least the great teacher of the Kabbalah, is buried. And every single year, if you go to Meron, there are tens of thousands of people that go to this place. Tens of thousands. It is like the Jewish celebration. And I've never been to Lag BaOmer in this town of Meron. She has been. So, Judy, have you been? No. Never Meron, Lag BaOmer. Is that on the to-do list?
I did.
You were there.
Of course. Many times.
Oh.
Har Meron.
Veteran.
But on Lag BaOmer or not?
Yeah.
Wow. So hear that? Watch that. We have 10 people in the room and no one did it. A few people listening from around have been. That's
and
pretty
Judy's saying that Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai came out of the cave, and he was born and died on ER 33.
Well, the 18th of ER, the 33 day of the Omer.
Yeah,
So
I
we've
was
heard
going
a
to
lot.
say
Let's
18.
dive
What is
into
33?
The texts over here. We begin with text 1 on page 58.
And everybody leave and go to Judy's because she says free food and drink for everyone. No, it's on Har Meron. All right,
okay.
go on.
Okay. So we are going to talk a little bit about the person who passed away on this date. In Hebrew, you'll often hear his name called the Rashbi. The Rashbi is just an acronym, Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Together, Rashbi. Any of the sages in the Talmud or later in the Middle Ages, their name often was an acronym of them and their dad's name. So Reb Yisroel ben, what's your father's name?
Shmuel.
So Yisroel ben Shmuel would be the Rivash. Hear that, Eric? You're the Rivash. And there actually is a Rivash out there. But Reb Yisroel ben Shmuel, Rivash. His name was Rashbi. And what Here's a text actually, just to get us opened up over here from the Lubavitcher Rebbe who passed away in 1950. He was actually the only of the Chabad Rebbe's who visited Israel. And he, in his diary, recounts something about being in Meron specifically. Text 1 on 58. And we have more books out here if anyone needs a book there. Text 1. Yes.
And when I merited to be in the Holy Land, may it be rebuilt speedily in our days, and to use the terminology of Hasidim of Israel, at the Rashbi and the authors of the idea of the
That's a book of Kabbalah.
Kadisha. I heard them say Miron, Rashbi's burial site, or one, is a happy ohel. When one comes to Miron, one is internally strengthened. There I heard the expression, the Rashbi is a happy Rebbe.
So usually you think of a grave site as a somber place, a sad place. So he says, when I got to this place, they said, this one's different. This is a happy burial site. That's an odd expression. Because the Rashbi was a happy Rebbe. So we're going to open up with that because it's odd that the day someone passed away would turn into a celebratory day. But that is what happened with Lag BaOmer. We're going to skip some texts now. But let's focus on the life of the Rashbi. He lived around 1900 years ago. Okay? 1900 years ago. Just after the destruction of the Second Temple. The Second Temple in Jerusalem was destroyed in the year 70 of the Common Era. They destroyed Israel. However, there was still a large yeshiva that was left. There's a well-known story that one of the great Jewish leaders, just before the destruction of the temple, found favor in the emperor's eyes, and he said, you can have one last wish. Rabbi Yochai ben Zakkai, right? You're familiar with the story. He actually gave him 3 wishes, not one. And one of them was, when you obliterate Israel and you get rid of our political independence, save Yavne. Leave the city of Yavne, which was where the yeshiva was, where the study of Torah was. In the sense of, even if you destroy us physically, even if you destroy the temple, even if you destroy our political independence, we will always be a people if the Torah stays. So spare the city of Yavne, where a lot of the sages were. So if we have to go through the biography of the Rashbi, he lived around this time, 1900 years ago. I'm going to skip to text 5 on page 63. It appears from the Talmud that his father was a lay leader of some sorts. He was very well connected with the local Roman officials. His wife was the daughter of, what was the name? Pinchas ben Yair, who was another person in the Talmud mentioned frequently. And from the Talmud, it's apparent that he studied with the greatest of the sages at the time. Text 5, just Anne for an example.
Our rabbis taught. It once happened that a student came before Rabbi Yeshua and asked him, is the evening prayer optional or obligatory? He said to him, it is optional. Then he came before Rabbi Gamliel and asked him, is the evening prayer optional or obligatory? He said to him, it is obligatory.
And then fireworks started because they debated, and we're not going to go through that whole discussion, but the Talmud asks, who was the student that started this debate?
Rashbi.
Okay, so we see he was studying amongst the greatest minds of the time, the greatest rabbis of the times, Rabbi Yeshua and Rabbi Gamliel. After class, you can ask me about that debate, whether Ma'ariv is obligatory.
So was the Sanhedrin still there? Wasn't Rabbi Gamliel head of the Sanhedrin?
Yeah, the question is, which Rabbi Gamliel was it? There was many Rabbi Gamliels. I don't know. Now,
I thought you can't ask 2 rabbis the same question for a decision.
And this story ended up right. You're not, right, after you get your answer, you're not supposed to go shopping around for other answers.
I want a second opinion.
What?
I want a second opinion.
Well, no, but when you do that, you're actually supposed to tell the second person. This is by the way, I asked X and Y. and they said this, and now I'm asking your opinion, because that way you're at least giving some respect to who you asked, and you're not asking to start an argument. This actually started a huge argument. If you're interested, you can study. Ever learn that section in Brachis? Very, very interesting story. In any event, even though he studied from Rabbi Yehoshua and Rabbi Gamliel, his main teacher was Rabbi Akiva, who we learned about a few weeks ago. And this is the same text now that we did a few weeks ago, text number 6. Hal, we did this text a few weeks ago, text 6 on page 63.
It was said that Rabbi Akiva had 12,000 pairs of disciples, found in an area stretching from Gabasa to Antipater.
And I don't know where that is on the map. I don't know where Gabasa is on the map. I don't know where Antipater is on the map.
And all of them died at the same time because they did not treat each other with respect. The world remained desolate until Rabbi Akiva came to our rabbis who lived in the south and taught the Torah to them. These were Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Simon, and Rabbi Elazar ben Shemua. And it was by they who received the Torah.
Revived the Torah. The Torah.
Latana taught. All of them, the original disciples, died between Passover and Shavuot.
Okay. So Rabbi Shimon was one of the 5 remaining students who, because we have Torah today because he passed it down. Everyone else died in this plague, which we discussed a few weeks ago. Now, throughout the Talmud, he is placed on a very, very high level. There are many holy people in the Talmud, but Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai is seen as an exceptional soul. And we're going to actually do a Kabbalistic text over here, text 7. And, most of us are not able to go around and say, hey, you're this kind of soul, you're that kind of soul. But there's some books in the Kabbalah that discuss unique individuals that had a special soul. Now, what does it mean to have a special soul? All of us have a soul that is a divine spark. Okay? Comes straight from God. So, straight from God, a spark of God. So what it says in Kabbalah, that is where the soul begins from. And then, just like a fetus develops physically, okay, over 9 months, a soul also has to transition into what? Going from a spiritual world into a physical world where you have to make a living, and you're eating, and you're drinking, and sleeping. That's a big transition. So it says in Kabbalah that all souls have to go through numerous levels and worlds. Now, these are not worlds as in physical worlds, spiritual realms, to go from spiritual to physical. And what it says in Kabbalah is although every single soul has to go through all these worlds, some have more of a direct flight than others. Others stop off and pick up souvenirs at each one of the stops. And what I mean by that is they become affected by the stops they go through. Some souls land here and they're still from another world. They still have never really gotten used to the physical world. So look at the way, where are we up to in the reading? Eric, this is going to be some, here goes.
So, however, not all the souls of Sadiqim are capable of such elevation. Only those whose souls are literally from the world of Atzilut, like the soul of Rashbi, and those of his ilk.
I don't know that interesting translation. His group. So we're not going to have a whole discussion here of Atzilut, but it's the highest of the 4 worlds, and it's almost like he jumped straight from that world to this world. Going back to the metaphor of conception, this is actually given. Let's talk about 4 stages in a baby being. First, there's the moment of conception. Then the baby's beginning to form. Then the baby's fully developed, just still inside of mom.
Needing to be fattened up.
Right, but it's fully there, but it's still inside of mom. And then the baby is on its own. Okay? That is what happens to all of us. Okay? Which world are we, so to speak, on our own? This one, not because we're truly on our own. The truth is, every single moment we get our life from where? God, but do we feel it? No. We think we're independent. We perceive ourselves as being independent in this world. So this world is compared to birth in the sense that we think of ourselves as truly independent, right? When the baby's in mama's tummy, all of its life, all of its breath, right, energy comes. So that would be compared to a soul that is cognizant of the fact that it's always in God's embrace. Atzilut would be like the moment of conception. At that moment, if you ask, what is the baby? What is it? It's part of its parents. I mean, it's not exactly an independent existence. So certain souls come down into the world and they never lose that. They never look at themselves as an I. It's never like, oh, I want to. No, I'm no more. I am just a means of fulfilling God's will here in the world. Most people are not, and that's why this text 7 says these are very rare souls. So the story that is best known.
Is there any relationship between that and the Lamed Vav people?
Yeah.
And the what
It says somewhere that there's 36 hidden tzaddikim in every generation. Hidden as if we don't know their identity. Could
They
it be?
don't know.
Correct. I don't even know if there's 36 souls from Atzilut in every generation. I don't think so. That is exceedingly righteous individuals. That need not be from Atzilut. This is very unique. And you'll see how unique this is based upon text 10. Well, no, let's do text 9 first. This is the most famous story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that people discuss on Lag BaOmer, but we're learning it from the source in the Talmud. Here goes.
For the government had once issued a decree that Jews may not keep the Shabbat, nor circumcise their children, and the women were prevented from
Immersing in a mikvah, right?
The rabbis conferred among themselves who should go to Rome to work for the annulment of the decrees. Let Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai go, for he is experiencing
You hear that? He's an experience. You want it. So it was like that was his job. You know, that was his reputation. We need a miracle here, and he went. Yeah. Now, for a while it worked, then it didn't work, and they turned on Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, and his life was in danger because he continued to study Torah. And text 10 is perhaps the most famous story of Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai that we have. You may have heard it before. This is the story of Lag BaOmer, text 10.
So, due to the mortal danger from the authorities, they went and hid in a cave. A miracle occurred, and a carob tree and a well were created for them.
That's pretty much their diet. Carob trees and water.
They would strip their garments and sit up to their necks in sand. The entire day they studied while covered only in the sand. When it was time for prayers, they robed, covered themselves, prayed, and then put off their garments again, so that they should not wear out. Thus they dwelt 12 years in the cave.
And let me explain, this is not a Kabbalistic text, what we're studying now. This is from the Talmud. We're going to go in a moment, where do we get this idea that he wrote the Zohar? We're not there yet. This is a legal text. This is the Talmud. The Talmud is telling us a historical story. And it says that for 12 years, their life was in danger, and they lived in a cave.
What does it mean to be covered in sand? Is that like for real?
They would bury themselves.
What about all the critters out there?
Look, I'm just telling you that this is the life they lived. Yes.
Crawling.
Then Elijah. So they had a little revelation from above, and Elijah comes. Keep on reading.
Then Elijah came and stood at the entrance of the cave and exclaimed, "Who will inform the son of Yochai that the emperor is dead and his decree annulled?"
Right? You don't want them to stay there forever, right? And who is the they? It's actually Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai as well as his son Elazar. Okay.
So they emerged, seeing people plowing and sowing.
Let's stop here for a moment. They emerged. Just imagine what that life was like for 12 years. They were not in this world, practically. They weren't. Their souls were almost like, they were just studying Torah and living a purely spiritual life, almost like the Jews in the wilderness, in a sense. And I mention that story because we'll discuss it in a few weeks, where some of the Jews didn't want to go into the land of Israel. And one of the reasons given for that is they didn't want to have to get back to a regular life where you have to work for a living. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai and his son had a very hard time at the beginning adapting to regular life. Keep on reading.
Seeing people plowing and sowing, they exclaimed, They forsake eternal life, the study of Torah, and engage in temporal life, pursuit of livelihood. Whatever they cast their eyes upon in the context of their negative view of the prevailing conduct was immediately burnt up.
So they sort of like, they were so upset by anyone who they felt was spending their time in worthless pursuits that they like, they burned with anger. Keep on reading.
Thereupon a heavenly voice came forth and called out, "Have you emerged to destroy my world? Return to your cave."
Yeah.
Doesn't sound like happy, Rabbi.
Well, we're not.
His soul wasn't quite there yet.
Keep on reading.
So they returned and dwelt there 12 months, saying, "The punishment of the wicked in Gehenna is limited to 12
So they
months."
realized they were doing something wrong, and they said 12 months is usually the time of rehabilitation.
A heavenly voice then came forth and said, "Go forth from your cave." Thus they emerged. Wherever Rabbi Eliezer wounded by the force of a similar negative reaction to witnessing the prevailing conduct, Rabbi Shimon healed.
So it sounds like his son didn't fully get there yet, but his father, Rabbi Shimon, then healed. Skip the brackets for a moment. On the eve of Shabbos. Just want to stay focused. Yeah.
On the eve of the Shabbat, before sunset, they saw an old man holding 2 bundles of myrtle and running at twilight. "What are these for?" they asked him. "They are in honor of the Shabbat," he replied. "But one should suffice you.
Why 2? Why not 1?
One is for Zachor and one is for Shemor, the 2 biblical terms used in instructing regarding the Shabbat," said Rabbi Shimon to his son. "See how precious the commandments are to the people of Israel." Thus their minds were calm.
In other words, it took them a while to realize, guess what? We're living in a physical world. And on the contrary, by engaging in jobs and work, we have the ability to use physical items for holiness, for mitzvahs, for tzedakah. So Rabbi Shimon had to reorientate himself to this life. Okay. We're going to skip some texts over here.
But you know what? Is it part of the negative in that he was criticizing other people? Is that what the negative was?
It was yeah, but it was,
I think it was
it
not-
came from a place of it came from a place of not being of this world and not being able to deal with this world.
Not understanding about the
Correct.
value of work.
And not understanding the value of work. He was living in a cave for 12 years, immersed in totally spiritual pursuits. Now, those that have been here many times know that in Chabad especially, the emphasis of the whole purpose of creation is what? Making a physical world holy. Not isolating ourselves from the world, but engaging in the world and using Torah to light up the world, not using Torah to escape from the world. Okay? But when you go from that extreme, it takes you time afterwards to reorientate yourself. Okay. So if you just study Talmud, Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai will be best known for this story, as well as the fact that his name is throughout the entire Talmud. Text 13a, I just want to paraphrase. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai was very involved in the legal aspects of Torah. It says every single chapter of the Talmud has Rabbi Shimon's name at least once. Interesting. His name is mentioned throughout. And text 13b, anytime you see in the Talmud Rabbi Shimon, who's that a reference to? Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Did you know that? Every Rabbi Shimon that doesn't have any other name associated with it is Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Okay. But when most people think of him, she okay?
Yeah, she's just going to the bathroom.
Okay. When most people think of him today, he's not best known for his contributions to the Talmud, because many people wrote in the Talmud. Many people contributed to that discussion. What he is best known for is traditionally, and we'll have a discussion now about this, as the author of the main Kabbalistic work, the Zohar. Okay? The Zohar, which is the main Kabbalistic work, is traditionally attributed to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. And it would make sense. If you were studying, he was in the cave, 13 years, cut off from physicality, who would be better suited to develop Jewish spirituality, Jewish mysticism, the inner dimension of the Torah, than Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai? And I want to finish and then I'll take questions. So it's important to note that the Torah, you know what? At this time, let's actually do a teaching from the Zohar itself. I might have done this with you. I have a few here. Pass these out. And then we're going to go back to the story and we'll take questions. And I need one copy myself, I'm sorry. And we're going to do the one that says Zohar, Parshat Ba'alotcha, page 152.
There's a lot of extras.
Okay. This is from the Zohar and Parshat Ba'alotcha. Who's reading? You see that? In the middle? I'm skipping the first one, very fascinating first one, but we'll do this one. Rabbi Shimon said. Do you mind reading?
152a?
Yes, 152a.
Rabbi Shimon said, "Woe to the person who says the Torah comes to give instructions and tell descriptive stories and simple tales. If this were true, even in our own time, we would be able to make Torah out of simple stories and praise and embellish them even better than all stories in the Torah. If the Torah came only to give instructions and tell the background history of the world, then even the ministers in the different governments of the world have stories that are more important and beneficial from which we can learn wisdom and ethical behavior. If that were true, we should learn their examples and make a Torah after their examples. Of course, this is not the case. Every word in the Torah reflects higher wisdom and higher secrets."
So, yes, it is true that the Torah tells us stories. Yes, it is true that the Torah tells us instruction. But every word reflects higher wisdom and higher secrets. Keep on reading.
"Come and see. The spiritual world and the physical world are weighed in one balance because everything in the spiritual world has a reflection in this world. So Israel is below and the heavenly forces are above," in capitals. "It is written regarding the angels. He makes his angels of spirit and his ministers of flames of fire." Psalm 10:4. "Now when these spiritual forces make their presence in the world, they have to take on the clothing of physicality. If they didn't appear in this world in appropriate form, they would survive in the world, and this world would not be able to take their holiness and relate to them."
We won't have time to do all of this. I mean, this needs a lot of explanation, but I wanted to go to this paragraph now. Continue.
Keep reading. "Now you can understand why the narratives of the Torah are only the outer clothing of the Torah. Whoever thinks that this outer clothing is in fact the Torah, and there is nothing underneath the clothing, is spiritually backward and has no portion in the world to come. So it was that
King David begged.
David begged, open my eyes that I may see wondrous things in the Torah."
So King David in Psalms asks God, open my eyes, gal einai, v'abita niflot m'torasach, in order that I should see wondrous things in your Torah. What's interesting about that pasuk, gal, is the same letters as what? Lag ba'omer.
Oh.
Yeah. In any event. Keep on reading.
"The body is more important than the clothes, and more important than the body is the soul. Come and see. There are clothes that stand out to everyone, and when stupid people see someone in beautiful clothing, they don't look any further. The body is more important than the clothes, and more important than the body is the soul. In the same manner is the body of the Torah. These are the commandments that are called her body. This body of the Torah is dressed in stories from this world. The fools of this world only look at this outer clothing of stories. They don't delve into what is contained beneath the outer shell. Those who know better look into the body beneath the outer shell. The wise ones, servants of the highest king, those who stood at Mount Sinai, see through the soul of the Torah that is truly her essence, and in the future will delve into the soul that is within the essence of the Torah."
There's a lot here to parse, but the main idea is, just as people can look at clothing and not see the body, and see body and not see soul, similarly, we need to recognize that Torah has many layers. So like an onion, where you keep on peeling layer after layer, the Torah on the outside is stories and laws, deeper is ethical truths, deeper is spiritual truths of the cosmos, deeper yet is understanding God, so on and so forth. So Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai authors or teaches many of these secrets. And it's not to say that it started with him. It begins way back. But it's only that for a period of time, it was only taught to a very, very select few individuals. It is also true that for a period of time, when people looked at the Torah, they weren't fools. And they automatically saw more truths that were hidden there and didn't need everything spelled out for them. The more external we become, the more we need people to tell us what are the deeper dimensions of the Torah. So while he's in the cave, he takes the teachings from his teachers and he develops them and develops them and develops them, and that becomes the beginning of the Zohar. Now, if you go on Wikipedia and you look up Zohar, you'll notice that there's a lot of fierce debate in academic circles as well as in Jewish circles, the authorship of the Zohar. What happened actually in history is only in the 1300s did a Spanish Kabbalist, Moshe ben Leon, come out with this Zohar. He takes it out. We'll see in a moment where he claims he gets it from. And in the 1300s, in the 1400s, in the 1500s, that's when it first is printed and begun to be studied by Jews. What about before then? What about before then? So here you will see different opinions. The traditional understanding, and the Chabad Rebbeim stood by this very strongly, is that the teachings are attributed to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. He didn't write it though. The next generation after him continued to write it, and then it could have continued to develop afterwards for centuries until it was written down and hidden for a large period of time. Only much later did it become universally known. That is, now even in the Zohar itself, there are names of people who lived after Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. So it's clear that what? He didn't write the whole thing. I mean, even the most traditional of believers would say he didn't write the whole thing. But there are many, even in religious circles, that will explain the teachings came from him, but it was developed in the centuries afterwards. And we're going to do a few texts now about that. Yeah. You had a question.
About Isaac Luria?
Arizal is 1600s already. 1600s. So by that time already, many people are studying it. Many people, yes.
There are a lot of references in the Zohar to the Masoretic text, how it's written, but that seems to have been written after. That seemed to be put into place 2 centuries after.
Traditions were there, but it was still oral at that point.
I think.
But how do you put in oral dots and commas?
Because people were still chanting the Torah. It wasn't written down in a specific way. Not really.
Okay, but you can't chant double vowels and. Okay.
Good question. Next. Yeah, it's a little cold in here. Good. Thank you,
Well, I
Eric.
was going to suggest that it was interesting that Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai wasn't by himself. If he had been by himself, he would have been solipsistic. All of his thinking would have been only with him.
Interesting. That's a good point.
But if he was talking presumably to his son, maybe his son contributed a little bit. Otherwise,
Correct.
there's no back and forth.
Correct. Text 15 is from an ancient Kabbalist. And again, there are many stories. I've never heard this before. Oh, this is from the Chidah. I quoted the Chidah this past Shabbos.
Oh, yeah.
Whoever was there, I quoted the Chidah this past Shabbos, Rabbi Chaim Yosef David Azulai. And look what he writes. This is interesting. Where are we up to in the texts? Oh, do you mind reading, please?
I saw the following written by Rabbi A. Ravigo. I found an ancient manuscript of the Zohar in possession of my teacher, Rabbi Moshe Zakuto. I found it written within it that in truth the leader of the Kabbalists was Rabbi Nekunya ben Hakana. He authored Sefer HaBahir, and after him Rashbi made the Zohar, and authored several other works like the Tikkun.
In other words, many of the Kabbalistic texts came from the era of the Tanaim, from the sages in the Talmud. Keep on reading.
When Rashbi, his son Rabbi Elazar, and that entire generation passed away, the wisdom of the Kabbalah was lost until God made it happen that one of the eastern kings ordered some excavations in a particular place for commercial reasons, and a box was found, and inside it was the Sefer HaZohar. He sent for the scholars of Rome, but they did not know it or understand it.
Interesting. You ever see this? This is very fascinating. I never saw this before.
He sent for the Jews, and they came to him, saw the book, and said to him, Our Lord and King, this book was made by a wise man. It is profound, but we do not understand it. Is there no Jew in the world who understands it? He said. There is, they replied, in the city of Toledo.
And let me explain. It's written in such hard terminology that even Talmudic scholars would not be able to understand it. It says, where can you find anyone that can make sense out of this thing? Go to Toledo. Interesting. The Spanish scholars had more of a tradition in Kabbalah. Yeah.
The king sent the books to his soldiers to Toledo, and when the wise men of Toledo saw them, they celebrated with great joy and sent many gifts to the king. From there, the wisdom of Kabbalah was publicized among the Jewish people.
Right. And if anyone is interested in the debate, I have an interesting essay I found online from someone written in 1958 who makes many proofs why it is far more ancient than the 1300s. Because there are those that believe that this Moshe ben Leon actually wrote it. So what you'll read is some academic scholars say he wrote it, but if you want it to sell well, what do you say? This is from 1,000 years earlier, right? But there are many claims over here, and I'll just share a few of them. In the Zohar, it quotes certain midrashim that were not even known at that time. Couldn't have been written there. The Zohar's major opponent at that time said the Zohar is only around for 300 years, but even he agrees that it was there before Moshe ben Leon. It would be very difficult that he would forge a work of the scope of the Zohar in 6 years, as some of these academic scholars claim. And a comparison between the Zohar and this fellow's other works show a major difference in style. He would have to do a really, really good hoax job in order for this, you know. There are others as well. Yes.
I thought the Zohar was written in Aramaic, but this is making it seem like maybe it was written much late. I mean, earlier than Aramaic.
Well, Jews always studied Aramaic.
Always. So when did Aramaic come about?
Aramaic.
When did it come about?
I don't know. I'm turning. I don't know. I don't know the answer.
It must have been anyhow before the destruction.
I don't know the answer to that. I don't know the answer to that. We'll see some of the traditional sources here. 74. I want to do these fast. I'll paraphrase. He writes, it is attributed to Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, but he didn't write it. His students and his son made it based on what they received from him. Similarly, many of the other midrashim, it says, are written by Rabbi Akiva. It wasn't Rabbi Akiva, it was his students that wrote it. And text 17 as well, it was students and students who wrote it down. What does the name Zohar mean?
Bright light.
Bright. And it isn't just because the book begins that way. Let's do page 75, text 18. Where we want to go back around, Jackie?
Okay. In the inner dimension of Torah, the themes of light and revelation are especially pronounced, as is expressed in the name by which the Zohar is known in Hebrew.
Right.
Zohar, after the verse quoted at its beginning, and the wise will shine, Zahiyu, like the brightness of the sky.
So it begins, the wise will shine like the brightness of the sky. How do you say shine? Yazhiru, Zohar. So that is the opening words. And many times in Torah works, a name gets its, the name of a book comes from the opening words. Like the book of Genesis is called what? Bereshit. Why? Because the first word is Bereshit. So the Rebbe now says, it's not just a cute thing, whatever the first word is we take. If a book is known by a name, it must be deeper than that. Keep on reading, Jackie.
This beginning is not there tangentially or for purposes of fine prose. Rather, this is a beginning which expresses the overall content, the brightness of the sky, for through it, the truth and the essence of everything is revealed with a light and with a true eternal brightness.
So the Zohar sheds light on everything. And what is the goal of studying Jewish mysticism if not for that? What is the goal? to see the light in everything, to see the soul in ourselves, to see the soul in other people, to see the soul of Torah, and to see the soul of the world. What do I mean by the soul of the world? Whenever there is any experience, let it be a job, let it be a vacation, there's the body of it, and there's the soul of it. What is its inner purpose? What is its meaning? And the Zohar is called the Book of Light because it sheds light to the deeper meaning of everything. Now, I should note that in Chabad, we typically do not study often straight Zohar. That's not the tradition in Chabad. And the reason for that is it's very complex. It's very easy to misconstrue ideas. And that is why there were many opponents of the Zohar, because they didn't like the fact that anyone would just take ideas that are so cryptic and try to understand it based on their understanding. God forbid one can read the Zohar and come with very false conclusions. You can look at all these different levels of God and the Sephirot and come to the conclusion, God forbid, we have more than one God. That would be what happens if a non-educated person just picks this book off the rack. The other danger is that someone could focus just on the inner meaning of every law and not do what?
The spiritual.
No, just focus on the spiritual and not do the practical. And the whole purpose is to enhance Judaism. These are the spices that make the soup better, but it's not supposed to replace the soup, right? That's very, very important. And for me, that is one of the litmus tests I have when it comes to many of the organizations that teach Kabbalah. I want to know if the people who are teaching it are believing in the Torah and practicing the Torah, or is it only spiritual truths and not practical? That's very important. That is another litmus test. So typically in Chabad, the study of Zohar is the Hasidic texts take ideas from the Zohar and they translate them into a practical way that can be applied to life by everyone. And there are different streams. I'm not saying this is the only way, but if you're wondering, Rabbi, you're speaking so much about the Zohar, how come we don't do more study of pure Zohar? That is usually not the style in Chabad. But the teachings that we do in Tanya and many of the other books are all from the Zohar. And
What
other
is
books
the
like
difference between Tanya? The Zohar is in Tanya?
No. Tanya was written in the 1700s by the founder of Chabad. And it takes many spiritual truths and it makes a guide for living and overcoming our evil inclination. And it's one particular idea,
He'll quote the Zohar.
It will often quote the Zohar. But again, it's understanding the Zohar through the lens of the Hasidic teachers, not through the lens of what I pick up when I study the Zohar. But that's not to say that it can't be understood, and especially on a day like Lag BaOmer, I would want to study the Zohar from its source perhaps on Lag BaOmer, in addition to Hasidic, because it's the date of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai's passing. And before he passed away, he said, I want this day to be a happy day. Because on the day he passed away, as Hal pointed out, he told over a lot of his Torah, a lot of his secrets of the Torah on that last day he passed away. So he says, I want this day to be a celebratory day. And in a sense, the same way in a month from now, we will celebrate Shavuot, which is the day we got the Torah, an important Jewish holiday. To those that study Jewish mysticism, Lag BaOmer would be the day we received the deeper dimension of Torah, which would be that significant. So he connects to the holiday in two ways. One is he was one of the 5 students that didn't pass away. And 2 is he was a teacher of Jewish mysticism who passed away on this date. There's another fascinating text from the Zohar we don't have time to do, but it's a interesting text. You're welcome to read it if you want to on your own. Any questions?
Yeah.
Yes.
The fact that he was one of the 5 students who didn't pass away, was that have contributed to the fact that he continued in this vein because he felt a mystical connection with everything?
Right. And obviously he treated other people with respect, right? If the other ones did not, it would make sense that he didn't have that flaw, right? So absolutely.
Weren't these, by tradition, these teachings given to Moses on Mount Sinai? It was taught leader,
correct,
spiritual leader to leader, but there are earlier works in the Zohar.
Correct. There are earlier works. there are earlier works.
Like tribute to Abraham.
Correct.
Except
Correct.
for Yisroel.
Correct. So these are not new ideas. I'm happy you mentioned that. If we believe the Torah is from God, and we believe that the Torah was given at Sinai, it would make sense to say all of the Torah was given at Sinai. Not something was invented later on. However, that's when it became more revealed. And to a bigger extent, it became more revealed in the times of the Baal Shem Tov, when the Hasidic movement began, and it has been more. Any other questions?
One more. I just want to know. Sometimes you think about these people that go into caves and do all this studying, and they come up pretty crazy. I mean, I'm assuming
Every
that
Thursday
He's a holy
night, you go
person.
into a cave.
He didn't want to run into a cave because he was looking to, you have to
Yeah.
look at the
He
context
wasn't a
here.
hermit.
He wasn't
Yeah,
a hermit.
okay.
The rest of his life, he
So-
spent teaching and dealing,
And
with
people
the world.
came and visited him, and he was able to.
That's interesting. What was
explore.
his interaction with other people during those 13 years? I need to
He was
do some homework.
fleeing.
He was fleeing.
I mean, that's a
He
different.
didn't want to be there,
He
right?
left his wife. That's not
That's
very
Crazy.
nice.
Exactly.
Good excuse.
All right. But I hope this gives people a little deeper appreciation for both Lag BaOmer as well as Zohar and Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai. Any questions from our online community?
No,
I call it.
that
Very
was
good.
very, very enlightening.
Very good.
Zohar.
Enlightening, Zohar. Very good, Rav Amnon.
Yep.
Thank you to Nissan Communications for week in and week out making this available to everyone all over the world. If you would like to support the program, please donate at nissancommunications.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a wonderful week and a wonderful Lag BaOmer.
Thank you.
You are tuned to the Nissan Communications Network. Our weekly lineup of call-in programs includes Computers 2K Now with Amnon Nissan, My Life, My Will with Gisela DiCarlo, The Tanya Love Show, Health Then with Debbie Bruck, Breaking Free with Marilyn Shannon, Triangle Be Well with Howard Jacobson, Lunch and Learn with Rabbi Yisroel Cotlar, Lessons of Vietnam with NCVVI members, Current Affairs with Amnon Nissan. And if you tuned in too late, you can always watch each program in its entirety or download an MP3 audio file of it in the archives section on nissancommunications.com. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, follow us on Twitter, and like us on Facebook. Sponsored by Atomos.com, makers of quality video recorders and converters, CarolinaApparel.com, and DeltaForce.net.